I caught my wife tangled up with another man, so I handed her divorce papers right in front of him. She thought she'd ruined my life, until everything in hers collapsed, leaving her crying, homeless, and begging me to take her back. Hi everyone. My name is Daniel, I'm 34 years old, and until a little over a year ago, I honestly thought I had the kind of marriage people envied. You know the type: warm home, stable job, loving wife, and a future that felt solid. Predictable. Safe. I grew up in a pretty chaotic family, so stability was everything to me. I worked hard to build a life that wouldn't fall apart the way mine did when I was a kid. When I met my wife, Emily, she felt like the missing piece. She was bright, funny, and talked about loyalty like it was a religion. I fell for her fast, and she fell right back, or at least I thought she did. We got married after 3 years of dating. Nothing extravagant, nothing Instagram-worthy. Just a small ceremony with close friends and family. She cried when she read her vows. I believed every word. I used to replay that moment in my head whenever we hit a rough patch, thinking, this is the woman who promised forever. I had a good job in IT, steady income, and Emily worked part-time as a graphic designer, mostly from home. She always said she loved the freedom of it, that it gave her time to feel creative. I never questioned it. Why would I? Trust, to me, wasn't optional. It was the foundation of the entire relationship. For a long time, everything felt normal. We laughed a lot. We made plans for a house with a backyard. We even talked about trying for a kid within the next year. She told me she felt like our marriage was solid, that she felt safe with me. Hearing that meant everything. But looking back now, it's wild how blind love can make you. Around our 5th year of marriage, Emily started to shift. It was so subtle at first that I didn't recognize the signs. A little more distant. A little more protective of her phone. A few more late nights working on freelance projects. But I attributed everything to stress. She said she was swamped with new clients, and I believed her. My friends would joke sometimes, saying stuff like, "Man, she's really glued to that phone lately." I'd laugh it off like an idiot, saying she was just keeping up with work, or that graphic design people were always messaging each other about projects. I defended her without even thinking. I remember this one night, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, and her phone kept lighting up. She'd pick it up, smile at the screen, type fast, then set it face down again. I teased her playfully, asking if her phone was more interesting than the movie. She forced a laugh and said it was a client asking for feedback. I didn't doubt her. Not for 1 second. Because when you're in love, your brain convinces you that the person you chose would never betray you. But the distance grew. The bedroom got quieter. Her affection became inconsistent, warm one day, cold the next. And whenever I brought it up, she blamed work, or hormones, or stress, or anything that would keep me from looking closer. Meanwhile, I kept doing everything I could to make her life easier. I cooked. I cleaned. I took on extra hours to help us save for that house she kept saying she wanted. I thought we were a team. I thought we were building a future. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't even imagine, was that Emily had already given up on our marriage. She just hadn't told me yet. She was already slipping into someone else's life. Someone else's arms. Someone else's bed. The weirdest part? I still didn't see it. I kept telling myself, she loves you. She chose you. She would never do this. And I clung to that belief like a lifeline. Because when you've built your entire world around someone, admitting they're capable of destroying it is terrifying. Little did I know, the truth was waiting for me like a landmine, ready to blow up everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and commitment. And when it finally did, it wasn't subtle. It wasn't gentle. It was the kind of betrayal that rips the ground out from beneath your feet and leaves you gasping for air, wondering how you could have been so blind. That betrayal became the spark. The match. The beginning of the end. And the start of a revenge she never saw coming. Things didn't explode all at once. They simmered. They built up in tiny poisonous drops, enough to make me uneasy, but never enough to give me concrete proof. It was the kind of slow-burning shift that eats away at your sanity because you can feel something is wrong, but you can't prove it. The first ray-all crack appeared one Saturday morning. Emily said she was heading to a client meeting across town. Nothing unusual, she did that sometimes. But she left the house dressed differently. Not inappropriate, just more polished. Makeup done. Hair curled. Perfume. A level of effort she never put into her supposed client meetings. When I complimented her, she brushed it off with a quick, "They're a potential long-term client. First impressions matter." Reasonable enough. But when she said it, she didn't meet my eyes. That was new. She left at 10 a.m. The meeting was supposedly at 10:30. Around noon, I got a text, "Meeting running long. Might grab lunch with them." Again, reasonable. But something in my gut twisted. I tried to shake it off. Told myself I was being paranoid. But the unease stayed, sitting in my chest like a weight I couldn't get rid of. At 3:15, she finally came home. She said the meeting went great. But she was flushed, in that unmistakable way people get when they've been laughing, flirting, or doing something they shouldn't. That night, she fell asleep early. Her phone buzzed once. Then again. Then again. I glanced at the screen, it only showed "new message." She'd turned off preview notifications. She'd never done that before. The next day, she put a lock on her phone. When I asked about it, Emily said, "Clients send sensitive files. I don't want anyone accidentally seeing them." Anyone. As in me. Her husband. It stung. But I let it slide. I didn't want to be the insecure partner who made drama out of nothing. But things only got stranger. She started staying late at co-working spaces she claimed helped her focus. She stopped asking how my day was. Stopped hugging me from behind while I cooked, something she used to do every night. Our conversations felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. One night, I walked into her office to ask if she wanted dinner. She actually jumped, and slammed her laptop shut so fast it echoed. "Sorry," she said, her voice shaky. "Client NDA stuff." But her hands were trembling. That's when suspicion really started gnawing at me. The moment that broke my denial came a week later. I was doing laundry when I found something in the pocket of her jeans, a receipt from a restaurant. A nice one. A place we used to go for anniversaries. 2 entrees. 2 drinks. A date for the exact afternoon she'd claimed she was meeting clients. My stomach dropped. I just stared at that slip of paper for a full minute, not breathing, not thinking, just staring. Every excuse Emily had given me over the past few months suddenly felt like a puzzle I could finally see the picture of, and that picture was ugly. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed something undeniable, something she couldn't twist into a misunderstanding. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I started watching her. Not obsessively, not like a stalker. Just observing. Who she texted. When she left. How she reacted when her phone buzzed. That's when I noticed a name popping up on her screen, just once by accident, when she forgot to turn her phone face down at dinner. Evan. When I asked who he was, she casually replied, "Oh, just someone from a client's office." But the way she said it, too quick, too dismissive. It didn't sit right. My instinct screamed that she was lying. But I still held back, hoping, desperately, that I was wrong. Then came the night that erased all doubt. Emily said she needed to work late again. She kissed my cheek, grabbed her laptop bag, and headed out. But something about the way she avoided my eyes made my chest tighten. I waited 10 minutes. Then another. Then I got in my car and drove to the co-working space she claimed she was going to. Her car wasn't there. I drove to the restaurant from the receipt. Nothing. Then I drove, almost on impulse, to a small apartment complex on the other side of town. I didn't even know why, some instinct, some whisper in the back of my mind. And there it was. Her car. Parked right outside Unit 4B. My heart didn't just break. It cracked open. This was no misunderstanding. No overthinking. No misread signals. This was betrayal, undeniable, deliberate, calculated. And in that moment, standing there in the dark, staring at her car in front of someone else's apartment, I knew my life had just changed forever. There's a moment, an exact second, when suspicion stops being suspicion and becomes reality. A moment when your brain can no longer protect you with excuses, when your heart can no longer hide behind hope. For me, that moment was standing in front of Unit 4B, staring at my wife's car parked outside another man's apartment, while the blinds of his window glowed warm and golden. That light made me sick. It felt intimate, domestic. Like everything I thought belonged to me, our marriage, our trust, her love, had been carried into someone else's home. I walked up to the building. I didn't even know what I planned to do. Confront her? Knock on the door? Kick it open? Or maybe just stand there and see with my own eyes what I already knew. But when I reached the top of the stairs, I froze. Voices leaked through the door. Hers. His. Laughing. Soft. Comfortable. The kind of laugh she hadn't given me in months. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might pass out. I leaned closer, not meaning to eavesdrop, but unable to move. I heard her giggle, a sound that used to make my entire day, and then I heard the scrape of furniture, the shift of weight, and her breath hitching in that unmistakable way. I stepped back like I'd been punched. Air slammed out of my lungs. My knees nearly buckled. I didn't need to see anything else. Not one more sound. Not one more second. In that hallway, something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. It was the moment I stopped being the naive, forgiving husband who gave her endless benefit of the doubt, and became a man who would no longer tolerate even one more ounce of disrespect. But I didn't kick in the door. I didn't scream. I didn't pound my fists on the wall. I walked away. Silent. Calm. Because for the first time in months, I had control. I got in my car and sat there with my hands gripping the wheel, staring at the building like it was a burning bridge. And that's exactly what it was. Our marriage was over. Not ending, already dead. What hurt most wasn't even the cheating. It was the months of pretending. The lies. The way she came home after being with him and kissed me like nothing was wrong. The way she'd laugh at my jokes, touch my hand, share a bed with me, while giving her real affection to someone else. That was the knife. The infidelity was just the twist. I drove home slowly, replaying our entire marriage in my head. Our wedding. Our anniversary dinners. Our arguments. The nights she told me she loved me more than anything. Every memory felt poisoned. Corrupted. Like I had been living in a movie set and the real script was happening behind my back. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the wall until morning. I kept asking myself the same question on repeat. Why wasn't I enough? But eventually, somewhere around dawn, that question evolved into something else. Why am I blaming myself for her choices? And that's when something hardened inside me. A quiet, cold resolve. I realized that confronting her in anger would only give her room to spin lies, cry, manipulate, twist the story so I'd end up comforting her. No. She didn't deserve confrontation. She deserved consequences. By the time she came home at 8 a.m., looking tired and wearing the same clothes as the night before, I was a different man. She walked in with that fake casual tone cheaters always use. Morning. Sorry, I crashed at the office. Long night. Her voice was light, but her eyes didn't meet mine. I simply nodded. Okay. That threw her off. She expected questions. Suspicion. But all she got was calm acceptance, because I wasn't playing her game anymore. Inside, I was already gone. Already planning. I knew exactly what I had to do. And the first step was to gather proof, quietly, surgically, without ever tipping her off. If she wanted to live a double life, fine. I'd give her all the rope she needed to hang her own marriage. And when the moment was right, I would pull it tight. That was the night Daniel, the loving husband, died. And the man she betrayed began preparing for war. I didn't rush into revenge blindly. I'd learned my lesson. Acting out of rage leaves you exposed, makes you predictable, and lets the other person twist the narrative to their favor. I needed patience, precision, and proof. Everything had to be airtight. The first thing I did was document. Not in a confrontational way, not on a sticky note or a rushed text, but methodically. Phone records. Receipts. Work logs. Dates and times of meetings that never existed. Even photos, subtle ones, from her comings and goings that I captured without her noticing. Every little detail became a thread in the web I was weaving. I started keeping my own schedule. I noted her patterns. When she left, what time her phone buzzed, how often she smiled at it. It sounds obsessive, but it wasn't. This was strategy. Control was my priority. I needed to make sure that when I acted, there could be no argument, no denials, no wiggle room. Meanwhile, I adjusted my own behavior. I didn't act distant or suspicious. She had to feel comfortable. I smiled, kissed her on the cheek, made casual conversation. I even helped her plan a small weekend outing, all while knowing she would be texting someone else under the table. I wanted her to think she was untouchable, that she had the upper hand. Little did she know, she was walking straight into a trap. The next step was logistics. Filing for divorce is simple on paper, but timing is everything. I didn't want it to be a drawn-out process where she could manipulate sympathy or try to sabotage me. I needed the moment to be undeniable, theatrical, and inescapable. I wanted her to see the consequences before she even had a chance to react with excuses. I also had to consider the emotional side. Revenge isn't just about action, it's psychological. The satisfaction comes from the shock, the recognition of wrongdoing, the realization that they can't undo what they've done. I needed her to feel the full weight of her choices. That meant planning not just the divorce, but the delivery, the setting, and the timing. Then came the critical piece, the confrontation. I couldn't just hand her papers at home when she expected normalcy. That would give her a chance to cry, beg, or charm me into hesitation. No. I needed an audience, well, maybe not a literal one, but the context had to reinforce the reality of her betrayal. I spent days monitoring the man she had been seeing, Evan. Not in a creepy way, but enough to understand their routines. I learned when they met where, and even the small things, favorite cafes, delivery habits, patterns of secrecy. The more I watched, the more I understood her audacity. And that fueled my resolve. Finally, I rehearsed. I went through the entire scenario in my mind, the walk-in, the handover of the divorce papers, the look on her face when she realized that not only had I known everything, but I had also orchestrated the perfect moment for justice. I imagined the silence, the shock, the sudden collapse of her carefully constructed double life. I also had contingencies. What if she screamed? What if she panicked? What if Evan confronted me? I mapped out responses, rehearsed my tone, my posture, my calmness. It had to be flawless. I couldn't let emotion leak, because that would cheapen the impact. This wasn't about venting anger. This was about asserting control, delivering justice, and reclaiming my dignity. And all the while, I stayed composed at home. Emily never suspected a thing. She kept up her routine of flirtations, text messages, and secret meetings, completely oblivious to the storm brewing right under her nose. Finally, the day arrived. I didn't sleep much the night before, running through the plan repeatedly. Everything had to line up perfectly, her presence with Evan, my own calm, the delivery of the papers. Timing would be everything. If she caught wind too early, the moment would lose its power. As I sat in my car outside her apartment that morning, watching her leave with Evan, I felt a strange combination of nerves and exhilaration. This wasn't just revenge, it was closure. Justice. The moment that would redefine everything she thought she could take for granted. And in that moment, I knew she would never see it coming. The moment arrived with a precision that felt almost cinematic. Emily and Evan were sitting in her favorite coffee shop, laughing, leaning into each other like the world belonged only to them. I parked a few blocks away and watched, taking deep, steady breaths to keep my nerves in check. Every step, every gesture had been rehearsed in my head. I was ready. I walked in calmly, dressed in a neutral tone, nothing flashy, nothing threatening. Just me, carrying a manila envelope that contained the culmination of months of meticulous planning, the divorce papers, signed and notarized, ready to hit her like a freight train. She saw me first. Her smile faltered instantly. It wasn't the playful, flirtatious Emily I'd known. It was a flicker of panic, sharp and raw. And then she saw the envelope in my hand. The color drained from her face. Evan looked up, confusion written all over him. "Daniel." Emily stammered. Her voice was tight, uncertain, like a tightrope about to snap. I didn't speak. I simply walked to their table, my pace calm, deliberate, controlled. I placed the envelope in front of her. My eyes locked with hers, and I let the silence do the work. She glanced at Evan, then back at me. What is this?" she whispered, almost hoping it was a joke. I nodded once, slowly. Divorce papers. Her hand shook as she reached for them, but I pulled back just slightly, letting her hesitate. The confusion and panic in her eyes were intoxicating in a way that wasn't cruel. It was justice finally catching up to her. Evan finally spoke, his voice defensive. "Hey, what's going on here?" I looked at him with cold calm. "You're seeing someone else's wife. That's all you need to know." Emily's hand trembled over the envelope. Daniel, please, we can fix this." I shook my head. "No. You can't fix what you broke." The weight of her betrayal finally hit her like a physical blow. Her shoulders slumped. Her confident posture, the same posture she had used to hide lies for months, collapsed completely. The audacity of her prior actions dissolved into sheer vulnerability. And then the silence settled. A silence that screamed louder than any confrontation. I watched as she read the documents. Each page a reminder of months of deceit, each signature an unflinching confirmation that I had prepared for this moment carefully. Tears started to fall. First a single one, then more, until her cheeks were streaked, mascara running. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Daniel, please. I'm sorry. I made a mistake." It was almost poetic. The woman who had laughed in secret, who had built a double life on deception, was now faced with the full scope of her consequences. And there was nothing she could do to reverse it. Evan's anger rose next, a futile attempt to intervene. "Daniel, come on. This is insane." But I didn't flinch. I didn't justify, I didn't explain. I simply said, "You didn't know her like I did. But now you do. And so does she." Emily buried her face in her hands, sobbing. The humiliation, the shock, the realization that she had lost control over the narrative, over me, was complete. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop without another word. Every step I took away from them felt liberating, like shaking off a weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying for years. From the outside, it probably looked cold, ruthless, perhaps even cruel. But it wasn't about anger in that moment. It was about reclaiming what she had tried to steal from me, my dignity, my trust, my life. Later, I heard from mutual friends that Emily tried to contact me non-stop after that day. Calls, messages, even showing up at my door. But I stayed silent. I had made my point. There was no negotiation, no bargaining, no begging that could undo the reality I had laid before her. Evan was embarrassed beyond words. Their affair collapsed under its own weight. Emily had no one left to turn to, no place to hide, and no defense for the years of lies she had woven. By the time the dust settled, she was a shadow of the woman she had pretended to be. Proud, arrogant, and manipulative Emily was gone. What remained was a person forced to reckon with the choices she had made, and the damage those choices had caused. That day, I learned a hard truth. Betrayal can be devastating, but when handled with clarity, strategy, and patience, it can also be empowering. The tables had turned. The game was over. And I had emerged on the other side, stronger, clearer, and unbroken. The aftermath wasn't instant. It was a slow burn, a series of quiet realizations that hit Emily like waves she couldn't escape. The divorce papers weren't just legal documents. They were a mirror, reflecting every lie, every betrayal, every calculated choice she had made. And she had no one to blame but herself. At first, she tried to fight it. I got calls from her lawyer, emails filled with frantic words, threats thinly veiled under legal jargon. She tried to manipulate the narrative, paint herself as the victim. But everything I had compiled, the receipts, the proof of her meetings, the text logs, the photographs, was airtight. There was no wiggle room, no loophole. Every defense she tried was like building a house on sand. It collapsed instantly. Evan? He vanished. The moment the affair became public knowledge among mutual friends, he realized the consequences weren't worth it. I never reached out to him, never confronted him directly. His shame was punishment enough. He had become collateral damage in her self-destruction. Emily's social circle shifted dramatically. People who had once praised her suddenly kept their distance. Friends she thought she could manipulate saw the truth in the aftermath. How calmly and decisively I had handled the situation, how transparent her lies had become under scrutiny. Even at work, Emily struggled. She was forced to explain frequent absenteeism and client discrepancies that were really just her personal life unraveling. Colleagues whispered, She couldn't hide her turmoil behind a smile or clever words anymore. The life she had built with me, the facade of stability and loyalty, was gone. I, on the other hand, felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in months, I slept without anxiety. I no longer second-guessed her excuses, no longer felt the gnawing pit in my stomach when her phone buzzed. My world was mine again, clear, open, and untainted. I reclaimed the life I had worked so hard to build, and I did it on my own terms. The most striking part of the aftermath, though, was the transformation in Emily herself. Pride, arrogance, and entitlement were replaced by panic, remorse, and vulnerability. I heard through friends that she had cried herself to sleep for weeks, begged for forgiveness, and even attempted to reach out to me personally. But I stayed silent. Silence was part of the lesson. When someone chooses to betray you, their apology alone doesn't erase the damage. You can't just forgive words without consequences. The divorce papers, the strategy, the quiet control I exercised, they were the consequences she needed to face. I let her live with them. I saw the irony in the whole situation. She had thought she could manipulate me, hide her infidelity, and control the narrative. Instead, her actions had handed me a perfect opportunity, not just to separate myself from a toxic marriage, but to ensure she felt the full weight of her choices. The universe, in a sense, had done the heavy lifting for me. Over time, her pleas for forgiveness diminished. She stopped trying to contact me, stopped hoping for reconciliation. I didn't gloat or rub it in. I simply moved forward. My life was no longer tied to her whims or lies. I focused on myself, my work, my friends, my health, and the simple pleasures I had taken for granted while navigating a marriage built on deceit. Interestingly, people noticed the change in me. Friends and family commented on how composed, confident, and centered I seemed. They didn't know all the details, but they saw that I had emerged stronger, unaffected by the betrayal, while Emily's world crumbled around her. The truth is, revenge isn't always about chaos or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's about reclaiming control, setting boundaries, and letting consequences do the talking. Emily begged, cried, and realized too late that trust isn't a commodity to be traded or manipulated. It's something sacred. And when you betray it, you can't just ask for it back. By the end, she had lost her credibility, her social standing, and the illusion of a perfect marriage. I had lost nothing, except the pain of betrayal that I willingly left behind. I didn't seek to humiliate her beyond what her actions had already done. I just acted with precision, patience, and a calm that she could never anticipate. And as I sat alone one evening, reflecting on the entire ordeal, I realized something profound. The aftermath of betrayal isn't just about punishment, it's about clarity. It's about seeing the truth of who someone really is, reclaiming your dignity, and moving forward without allowing the past to define you. Sitting alone in my apartment that evening, I thought about everything that had happened, how quickly life can shift, how betrayal can cut deep, and how revenge, when executed with clarity and patience, can restore something far more valuable than pride. It's strange, really. I never wanted to hurt Emily for the sake of hurting her. That wasn't my goal. My goal was truth. My goal was justice. And justice, I realized, doesn't always need to scream, it just needs to land where it matters. In her case, it landed squarely on the life she had thought she could manipulate. I replayed the day I handed her the divorce papers countless times in my mind. The calm, the quiet authority, the look of shock and desperation on her face. It wasn't about cruelty. It was about reclaiming my life. I had spent months gathering proof, planning, watching her carefully, and strategizing my move, not out of malice but out of self-preservation. There's a lesson in all of this that I'll carry with me forever. You can't save people who are determined to deceive you, and you certainly can't force them to value what they've been given. Trust is sacred, and once it's broken, no amount of charm, manipulation, or apology can repair the foundation that was destroyed. I thought about the irony, too. She had thought she was clever, untouchable, and in control. She had thought I would remain blind, submissive, and naive. But life has a way of balancing itself, and in her case, it wasn't luck or coincidence. It was strategy, patience, and self-respect. I didn't need to humiliate her publicly. I didn't need to make a scene. I simply let her actions catch up to her. And the result was profound. I also learned the value of patience. Many people, when betrayed, act impulsively. They yell, they lash out, they give in to emotion. That rarely achieves the outcome you truly want. I waited. I watched. I planned. I ensured that the moment I chose to act was one she could not manipulate, argue, or escape from. That's when justice is most powerful, not when it's loud, but when it's precise. Another realization hit me. Closure isn't about forcing someone to apologize or begging them to understand the damage they've caused. Closure comes from reclaiming your life, setting boundaries, and refusing to let betrayal dictate your future. Emily begged for forgiveness endlessly after the fact, but it was meaningless. I had already moved on mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I had already reclaimed my power. The experience also reshaped how I view relationships moving forward. I now understand the importance of vigilance, communication, and intuition. If something feels off, it often is. Trust should never be blind. It must be earned, maintained, and respected mutually. And when it's broken, the consequences must reflect the severity of the breach. I won't lie, part of me feels a quiet satisfaction knowing she faced the full weight of her decisions. She lost the life she tried to manipulate, the man she tried to betray, and the trust of everyone who had believed in her integrity. But that satisfaction is tempered with clarity. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about reclaiming a life she attempted to steal from me. Now, months later, my life feels lighter, freer, unshackled from the deceit and manipulation that once occupied every corner of my existence. I focus on my work, my friends, my family, and my own growth. I've learned that sometimes the most powerful revenge is not chaos or destruction. It's the quiet reclamation of your dignity and the refusal to let someone else's betrayal define your story. And the moral of this story? Betrayal can be devastating, but it doesn't have to destroy you. Take control, act with clarity, and never let someone else's choices dictate your worth. Trust is sacred, and when it's violated, the only true justice is reclaiming your life and refusing to be a victim. Emily begged for forgiveness. She begged for understanding. But the truth was already written long before she ever admitted her deceit. I had moved on. I had learned. I had regained control. And in that calm, powerful reclamation, I found a freedom she would never know. The lesson is simple yet profound. Betrayal reveals character, patience creates justice, and dignity is something no one can take if you refuse to hand it over. Her world crumbled. My life went on, stronger, wiser, and unbroken. And that, in the end, is the sweetest victory of all. This is my story. My truth. My closure.